Hey y'all, this is Allie Spears, your host of the Ag Chicks podcast, where I cultivate connections with the women who are helping feed the world. Christina Chu is a Chicago-based sports dietitian and CEO of Christina Chu Nutrition, LLC. She supports athletes from youth baseball to professional combat athletes through individual nutrition counseling and team talks. Her portfolio includes working with MLB, UFC, NWSL, Bellator, NCAA D1-D3, NAIA, and tactical athletes, presenting at Harvard Law School, Jordan's Brands Flight Academy, DePaul University, and sports professional conferences, and media consulting for brands like Gatorade Performance Partner, Chomps, and Primark. Christina earned her bachelor's and master's degree in clinical nutrition at Boston University and has had past sport nutrition experiences at IMG+, Boston University Athletics, and the UFC Performance Institute. Please help me welcome Christina to the Ag Chicks podcast.
Well, Christina, I am very excited to have you on, and we met at the Prime Partners event. It feels like it was a couple months ago at this point.
Several months ago now, yeah.
It's flying by.
Truly.
But Christina is literally one of the funniest people I've ever met. And we got to interact. I was like, you definitely need to be on the podcast. So very excited to have you on today.
Thank you.
Dive a little bit deeper with you too.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited. And yeah, it was so great meeting everyone. I was obviously very comfortable being myself. So I'm just excited to honestly just continue that conversation just in a digital world.
Yes, for sure. And I think Hope and I kind of touched on this too when we chatted. It was like so many people, so much going on that yes, we interacted, but I don't feel like we actually like got to have like a full blown conversation at any point. So
totally.
very
Yeah.
excited to do that.
Yeah. And I love the episode with Hope and Allie as well. As soon as you posted about it, I was like, oh my God, I have to listen to it. But yeah, I mean, during that trip, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later too, it was just like, I was just trying to get to know people's names, like, and just trying to shove all that into the 2 or 3 days, however long that trip was, and really getting to know people, but also like, who are you? And like the first night I was like so confused. I was like, who are all these people? They are definitely not all dietitians. And so it was such a great trip. And I felt like they couldn't have done a better job picking a better group.
I could not agree more with that. And I don't know if any of us really knew like what we were getting ourselves into.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. And by the end of it, like we're all still talking and connecting and doing things together. So I think it's been, I mean, I don't know what their goal was for it, obviously, but I don't see how it could have turned out any better. Like, I think
literally
a well done, well executed thing for sure.
Agreed.
But I want to get into you and who you are. So, Christina, who the heck are you? Right? Like, where are you from?
I ask myself that all the time. What an existential crisis question. But to give myself a little bit of introduction, so my name is Christina Chu. I'm a sports dietitian based out of Chicago. I grew up in the Chicagoland area, out in the suburbs, went to school out in Boston for 6 years-ish, and then came back to the city of Chicago. And yeah, I mean, the thing that fulfills me and gives me life is being a sports dietitian. I actually knew I wanted to be a dietitian since I was 16. I was a junior in high school. So it's been a long time coming. I'm no longer 16, but that was really like my true calling. I didn't have 6 different career ideas in college. Like I really just knew I wanted to be a dietitian. So I work with athletes of all different levels, from youth to professional, to help them with their nutrition. And one of the areas that I specialize in is combat sports. So working with your wrestlers, your fighters, MMA, jiu-jitsu, boxing, Muay Thai. Yeah, that's it. But there's plenty more for now. And helping them not only compete to the highest level, but also to help them make weight. And if we ever think of the stereotypical fighter, boxer, I mean, we all probably knew our high school wrestlers. They tend to not cut weight in the healthiest manner. So my job is to help them do it in the most effective, but also the most health forward way possible, so they can continue to promote the longevity of their career versus just retiring early, which is what most of them end up doing just because of how extreme the sport is. But yeah, I mean, that's really me from like a career side of things. Otherwise, I'm just a Chicago girly, who, hasn't had that much exposure to agriculture, but I'm definitely learning a lot, and that trip helped a lot for sure too.
Yeah, and I think one of the unique things about the trip is we were all from all over the place. Like we had people from Canada even.
Oh
And
yeah.
the Canadian.
Oh yes. And we'll single them out. No.
Exactly. But I think it was just, for me at least, a really refreshing and like good reminder that we are all on the same dang team and we're
Mhm.
all in this to help feed people. So I think learning more about what you guys do from the dietitian side, and then you guys obviously learning a little bit more about the agriculture side, I think helps us almost like in our roles a little bit more, like
Mhm.
give us some tools that maybe we didn't have before. I don't know. That was just my perspective and kind of take on it. And like I said, just like a really good reminder, like, okay, yes, no, duh. Like dietitians are like a missing piece in all of this whole circle of communicating about our food. So that was kind of my take on things.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's tough because I'm thinking about even in the dietitian program, there's, you know, you're in school to be a dietitian, but even then there's so much like subtext to it.
Right.
I remember there are schools who are really focused on agriculture, and then there are schools who are really focused on clinical or the medical side of things. And that's really the route that I went down. And I remember specifically when I was in high school and deciding which college I wanted to go to, I was like, I don't think I can go down the agriculture route. Like, I don't like, these boots were truly meant for walking. They weren't meant for agriculture. I was like, I don't think I can do it, you guys. And I mean, I didn't want to go to the University of Illinois. Like I really wanted to learn from the medical side of things and understand like the medical science behind nutrition. And obviously as that evolved, I wouldn't be here if I didn't have an appreciation for agriculture. But I say that all to show like there's so many different avenues even within nutrition that you can go down. So like there might be dietitians who work in agriculture, but it is sort of like you only really talk to each other, and the dietitians in the medical space only talk to each other, and the sports only talk to each other. And it's a universal problem, honestly. But I think by having this conversation and for NCBA basically to force us all to stay together on one bus, and have those conversations, I didn't think anyone was had like a negative, like didn't want to talk or I wanted to argue. I think everyone came from the space of wanting to listen, regardless of, if you grew up or if you live in a town that's, what was it, 45 minutes away from a Starbucks, or for me, I can look at the Starbucks right across the street from me.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
And just, yeah, I think all of our impact and connection to people is like obviously a little bit different depending on where we're located, but we're connecting with them in the fact that like we're helping to make sure that they're fueling their bodies properly, whether
Totally.
that's in the field or doing what you do to help them like actually figure out what the heck they need to eat to make sure that they're performing at their highest.
Yeah. And it really does take a village. I don't think I'm candidly speaking, I don't think I would be the one that you want to raise the cattle. Like I just don't have the body, the brain, the the lifestyle for that. I always joke my body's made for AC as my air conditioning just turned on. Uh, but also at the same time, like the more I learn from it, like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm hearing from everyone, they're like, we don't get into agriculture because we love talking to people. Like, but I love talking to people. That's one of my favorite parts of the job. And you're like, I remember I was talking to Katie and she was like, this will probably be the only human interaction I'll have today, and everything else will be with the cows.
Yeah, isn't that crazy though? Like to think
Crazy.
about, like even myself, like I have a full-time job where I do interact with people all day long. And sometimes it's nice to come home and just be with the cows. But like it is like that's just kind of crazy to think about. Like yeah, Katie, I'm trying to think of who else is like super rural. Tucker even is like really
Yeah.
pretty far out there. Like they don't, besides the people who are with them all day, which is mostly their family and hired workers, like they don't talk to people, which is,
No.
it's like it can be an isolating lifestyle for sure if you're like not prepared for that too.
Right. And I can only imagine it's just then everything is like what you see on the internet, because you don't like go and talk to people in person. And then that can be just sort of like this dangerous, like slippery slope. Yeah, I wonder how they did it like way back when there was no internet. Like, you were just at peace,
I know.
not talking to anybody?
Yeah. This is so like random and off topic, but my boyfriend and I were watching, I don't know, what is it called? Shoot, is it Horizon or like New Horizon? The new like Kevin Costner.
Oh,
It's like, it's not Yellowstone, but it's kind of like
is it the King of Tulsa? That one?
not that
No.
one, but it's like
Okay.
along that same like genre of things.
Sure.
Anyways, they're like coming west basically in this 3-hour saga. And we were sitting there talking, and I was like, it's honestly amazing that we as a human species survived. Like,
Have you seen people these days? Like, how did natural selection not take you out?
literally, like, it's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you, obviously in Chicago, see people all the time, all day long.
Time.
So I'm sure
you can't get away.
Like, yeah, I can't. Props to you. I lived in Dallas for 3 months, I guess. And at the end of that time, I was like, okay, yes, very confident in my decision to not live.
Really? I've been living in a city for, gosh, almost 10 years. Actually, 10 years. Yeah, since college.
Yeah.
My college was, on kind of a main road, public transportation right there. So, fun fact, I have never owned a car.
So do you have a driver's license?
I do. So I have a driver's license.
Okay.
I know how to drive, but I haven't like had a car ever. In high school, it was always my parents' car. I've never owned a car. I don't know what it's like to go to the car store and lease a car or what have you. I don't even know what it's like to have car insurance. I've always lived in a city, never needed one. So I know how to drive, but I've never we don't have a car. Just like get in the car and go somewhere, we would need to rent a car. So last time I've really like driven was, oh gosh, like literally maybe a year ago.
That's crazy. Like, that is crazy to me. I get it. Like, it totally, like, what, you don't need a car, right? Like,
I don't need one.
You can walk, take an Uber. I don't know.
Train, bus. Absolutely. I love the public transportation. It gets so much hate, but honestly, there are moments of inefficiency. I get it. But for the amount of people that they need to serve and for the complexity of everything, like it works pretty well. There's a tracker on your phone so you can kind of time up your trips. That's a negative, right? Like you work around the bus schedule or the train schedule. They don't work around you. But if anything, you can always Uber. We have divvy bikes here, so it's like the bike stations where you can just pop it in and go. We have the Lime scooters, and I hate those things. But I mean, you can get around in many other ways besides having a car. And sometimes when you walk, it's faster than the car because you're sitting in traffic, and there's no traffic on the sidewalk. So it's just a different lifestyle.
Yeah, I do love Chicago though. I've been once, I guess, and it was right after the Cubs won the World Series.
What a time.
I know. Mm-hmm. And it was the day I flew in was the parade. And so I was like trying to get to my hotel to surprise my mom. And it was like a whole thing. And I ended up I was in, I guess it would have been an Uber at that time. Yeah. Yeah. It was definitely an Uber. And he was like, ma'am, this is as far as I can get you.
Yeah.
I ended up running down the sidewalk to the hotel, as the parade chaos is forming. And that, a core memory of me stopping and walking around and being like, what the heck am I doing right now? This is crazy. It was such a fun city.
That must have been an exciting time because they hadn't won a World Series in 100 years. Yeah, and I remember people were crying and it was just such a big deal. I wasn't there, unfortunately. I was in Boston, but I remember everyone telling their stories. And I think that's so funny in the sense of you could be a girl running down the street with your suitcase and no one would bat an eye. That's not a weird thing.
Yeah. Not no stop, hesitation, nothing. Just
exactly. That's a normal day. So that's what I love about it is you just do your own thing. Nobody really cares what you just as long as you're not hurting people. You can just be yourself in the city, and I love it.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so you went to Boston for college.
Yes.
Did you go, because I Hope explained this to me because I didn't even know this, but you did basically a bachelor's and then you do an additional program, right? For diet.
Yep. So think about it how the doctors have to do their residency. It's the same kind of thing, just called different. So we have our dietetic internship, or DI for short. And so everyone needs to do their bachelor's program. Now everyone needs to do their master's program too. I did mine back to back. I was like, I like school. I don't love school. So I'm just going to shove these in while I'm still in the learning mode. And then you do your dietetic internship, which is like the residency. So it's 1,200 hours, and you do rotations in inpatient, outpatient nutrition, food service, and then it kind of spreads on from there. I had an elective rotation, a renal or kidney, like, so basically dialysis, and pediatrics, which they were so small and cute and sad. I forgot. I probably did something else. Community. So I worked in a teaching kitchen basically, and that hospital itself had a rooftop farm. So they had plants and stuff that they grew on their rooftop. So we took some of that and cooked it for the community members and did heart healthy education in the process. So it's kind of all over the place. One day you're wearing a lab coat and you're seeing patients and charting, and then the next week you could be, for me, I was making chili for the hospital employees and rocking the hairnet, and the non-slip shoes and all of that. I was killing it. But yeah, I mean, there's just so much variety in the dietetic space. And so the internship is really a place to get that like hands-on experience with supervision. And then after that, you have to study for your board exam, and then hopefully you pass it. And then that's when you're a dietitian.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, like I feel like there's confusion around that too, because
Totally.
when people say dietitian, like they just think like, oh, you're a nutritionist and you got your bachelor's degree and or some additional training program, right? No, like you guys were committed to this whole process.
Oh, committed. Yes. Yes, committed. Thanks to the student loans. They're always there to tell you that
maybe in more ways than one.
Exactly. I'll always say the harder one to say is a harder one to do. So the dietitian is like kind of a mouth scramble, and then nutritionist kind of rolls off the tongue. Anyone can be a nutritionist. It's sort of like being a coach. Like anyone can be a coach of some sort. So it's not really a regulated term. So like anyone can really call themselves a nutritionist and not be held liable, really. So that's why I'll really emphasize, like, being a dietitian is like, after the amount of studying, the amount of student loans, the amount of effort that you put in, like, I don't really want to call myself a nutritionist. I definitely feel like I deserve that title.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Why don't they should call you like doctors of, I don't know. There should be a doctor.
I think Tucker already calls me a doctor, even though I've explicitly said that I'm not.
If I am going to be called doctor when I'm done with my PhD, you definitely should be, because I feel like you probably put in way more effort than I did.
It might get to that point where they'll require a doctorate. Physical therapy, they have now been requiring you to have a doctorate. So all your physical therapists should be DPTs. But yeah, I mean, it's just a label, honestly. It's just a label. It just depends on what's up here that really matters.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so you decided you loved the sports avenue and wanted to go into that. So after you finished your program and graduated and all that stuff, did you like jump right into having like your own practice, or what did that look like for you?
So I took my board exams February of 2020.
Oh.
And I was like, you were like, what was this disease spreading around? You're like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect me. Like, having the time, I was like, I did it. Like, since a junior in high school, I finally did it. I was a dietitian. Yay. And then I remember like going out one weekend to celebrate, and it was, what is it? A leap year, when it's like the longer day. And I was like, hell yeah. Like, this only happens once. Blah, blah, blah. And then like, I remember everything shutting down, and I was like, wait, what? And I was still in Boston at the time. And I was applying for fellowships and jobs, but everyone, if you remember, they were like, oh, like, we're not really hiring. So I ended up moving to Chicago. I live with my boyfriend. He got a job here. So then we moved. And I remember we had 2 months of free rent on our apartment because, again, no one was moving into the city.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, I got 2 months to figure this out. And then like a month and a half was coming, I was applying for jobs and reaching out to people and saying, hey, like, does anyone know anybody who's hiring? And at this point I was like, hiring for anything. It doesn't even have to be a dietitian at this point, but like, I'm just trying not to go red. And no one, it's June-ish, people are still laid off, and just a kind of terrible time for everybody. But I was like, you know what? No one's hiring. So I got to take this opportunity into my own. And so my private practice really started out of necessity, honestly, of the sense of, I guess I could keep applying, but like, I'm just going to keep getting no's or no responses. So I might as well take it into my own hands to at least try and make a couple bucks on my own and just see where it goes. And 4 years later, still going. So that's really how I jumped into it. I, of course, wanted to get some experience, even more experience. But at this point, I was like, you know what? I did my internship. I have mentors that I can, go to for any help. Like, no better way to learn than just to be shoved right into the pool. And that's exactly how my journey started.
That's so cool. I mean, not cool, I guess, but like, what a neat story and I feel like there's so many stories like that too, maybe with like our generation of like couldn't figure out where they fit, and so they kind of just did it on their own. And so I mean, and now look at you, right? 4 years later, and here you've got a full
Still here.
I am so excited to now be working with Ag Gear, a brand that is more than just clothing, it's a true partner in the field. Ag Gear understands the hard work and dedication that farmers and ranchers put in every day because they share the same values. The team behind Ag Gear is composed of hardworking Americans who appreciate the grit and determination it takes to keep agriculture thriving. That's why their clothing is purpose-built, crafted from advanced fabrics to withstand the long days and tough conditions that come with the job. From breathable gear for the summer to durable jackets for the winter, Ag Gear designs apparel that supports and protects those who feed the nation. Listeners can take advantage of a very special offer by using AgChicks at checkout to receive money back off your order. Again, that code is AgChicks at checkout. Looking for a snack that's American-made and a premium product? Try Prime Plus Wagyu beef bars. Crafted from 100% American Wagyu beef, these bars are rich in flavor and packed with protein. Whether you're out in the field or sitting at a desk all day and need a quick bite, Prime Plus Wagyu gives you the clean, delicious energy you need without any of the additives you don't. Taste the difference of true quality with Prime Plus Wagyu. Beef with a purpose. Use code AGCHICKS at checkout for a discount.
Rolling.
Yeah, still here. I think these stories probably happen a lot more than you would think. They're just like not talked about a lot because you're working and you're trying to, make money and support yourself. So, it was definitely a hard time. Like, I remember looking back, I remember pulling all-nighters. I remember being like, just having those moments of like, what the heck am I doing? Like, am I going to make it? Do I need to take out a loan for basic living? Like that? No, like I really was trying not to do that and basically not going in debt. And so that's a huge motivator. But in looking back, it's like, I wouldn't change it for the world. Like, it sucked, but I don't know if I would have taken that leap of faith if I wasn't shoved into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, okay, too, I guess my question would be, since the world was shut down, right? And like that obviously changed sports massively during that time. So how, like, were athletes like looking for dietitians? Like, how was that even for you at that point?
Yeah. So at that point, and I tell every student, every new dietitian this, when you first start, you take on anybody that you can, just because, like, financially, like, I don't know about you, but I was like, this is money and I'll take it where I can get it. So I was working with all different types of folks. I was working with like a lot of runners, a lot of people going to the gym. And it was that tricky, moment where people from offices had to work from home, and work from home created a different challenge of their steps away from their kitchen. And so for them, it was, how do we find that strategy to have structure in your diet and structure, honestly, in your lifestyle? Because if we remember, everybody was just kind of chilling at home. You went to bed whenever, like, it was just weird. And so, it wasn't, I worked with people of all different levels. From an athlete perspective, even thinking about youth athletes, sports were still around, and it was just a dicey topic to dance around, but people still wanted to think about their nutrition. If anything, kind of spinning it from the sense of, well, you have all this time at home. Like, what better time than now to learn how to cook, to really hone in on your nutrition when you don't have the distractions of everything else. And so it I guess shifted, but I think as a business, it's always good to shift with the times and just be like, all right, here are the issues that we're dealing with now. How do I help solve them? And so my business has kind of ever been evolving like that. I'm a little stubborn, I'm not going to lie, but I'm not so stubborn in the sense of we're doing things my way. It's just more so, what is the need of the people that are in front of me right now, and how do I serve them?
Yeah, that makes sense. And how, so for you,
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming most of your clients are virtual or
Yep.
Okay. So how does that work? Like, you have a consultation, I'm assuming, and then kind of go from there?
Yep. So seeing them virtually, 60-minute initial assessment, 30-minute follow-ups, and they're all through my HIPAA secure platform. And so yeah, it's just a Zoom session, kind of like this, and we'll chat. And it would just be like as if it was a one-on-one, but from the comfort of their own home.
Yeah. Okay. So neat. So neat. And then I know you kind of mentioned, obviously, the different types of athletes that you work with. High impact being, wait, is that how you described it? High impact?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even just with the combat sports, they're just high risk.
So I guess too, I mean, people obviously are different, and then the sport that they're playing obviously will play a part into kind of how you approach things too. And athletes need different diets
Mm-hmm.
that I would need, obviously. Like, your girl, not a high impact, high active sports. Like, I'm lucky if I make it to the gym most days. But what goes into all of that? Like, what do you have to do to make sure that they're getting what they need and those types of things?
Yeah. So how things work on the back end from my side of things is we'll do the assessment, which will allow me to see what their diet looks like, diet history, diet preferences, weight history, symptoms that they're experiencing, and their training schedule. I mean, all of it, right? So I tell my interns it's like investigative work. Like, you're a detective, you're picking up the clues. When you have to be able to ask the right questions for them to drop the clue in that case, right? So you're picking up all this information to try and create some sort of general consensus about the athlete. These are the things that they're doing really well, and these are the things that they can improve upon, right? So I've done enough of these to kind of give you a general-esque, like, chat GPT version of like a general athlete. Is that they'll come in, they might have breakfast, a lot of them don't. Their first meal is probably like lunch, and then they'll have a snack, and then they'll have dinner, and then they'll be like, okay, well then after dinner is really where it gets hectic, and then snacks and blah blah blah, blah after. If they're over 21, it's like I'll have 1 to 2 drinks on the weekend, Friday, Saturday. Like, it happens. That's just picture perfect, like what everybody says. And then it's like, okay, well, like, they do a really great job at least getting in some type of meal. Maybe their structure is really good, but what they're lacking in is getting that breakfast in the morning, right? They go 12 plus hours without food, but they have a morning practice. So their issue is that they're pretty much deficient in energy in the morning, and then making up for it all at night, and not really balancing their energy out from the most of it happening during the morning, and then not eating during the morning, and then being less active at night, but then eating everything at night. So it's out of whack, right? And so part of our job is to just kind of identify and explain the areas of improvement really that they have in their nutrition, and then what are the strategies. And that's huge too. I can definitely see some and know of some practitioners who maybe aren't the best at explaining this. They're like, you're not eating enough, and the athlete's like, cool. And then they're like, so what do I do? And they're like, bye. But for me, I like to be like, all right, so what does this look like for you? Let's work together to figure out what is something that you can do in the morning. So not only identifying the issue, but also what is the solution to it. And the thing that I wish more people knew about working with a dietitian is we might have some of the answers, but we have like the answers for different types of people, but we don't really know what the answer is for you until you give some sort of feedback back to us. So that's why I like to say, like, as a patient or client relationship, we work together. Like, I don't know everything about your life. You do. So help me to figure out what will work best for you, because I can make a suggestion that you would absolutely not do, but maybe we can think of something else. So we work together to figure out a solution from the athlete perspective as to how do they bridge that gap in where the area of nutrition that they're missing. So one of them could be energy, right? Total amount of calories that they're consuming or the timing of it. It could be their macronutrients. Maybe they're not getting enough protein or getting enough carbs. Rarely do I ever see people who aren't getting enough fats, but if we hit that kind of 90s low fat era, people like that can kind of sneak in. And then micronutrients, maybe they're not getting enough iron or B12 or potassium or electrolytes. Hydration could be another concern. And then there's just so many other layers outside of that too. Snacks, travel, maybe they get sick, maybe they're moving from home to the dorms and their whole food environment changes. Maybe they are going on an international trip and they need to help figuring that out. Maybe they're starting their season and they are constantly on the road. So like, what do you eat when you're driving down the interstate and there's only a Wendy's?
Right.
Well, we're going to have to make it work, right? So there's so many different layers after that. That's where the individualization happens for nutrition. But all that being said, it's not just like eat a pretty salad, goodbye. Like there's so many layers to nutrition.
Yeah. Well, and I think even just the sports aspect, like, adds so many layers. Like you just mentioned, my brother is a baseball player, and he on the road literally all the time. So he's great, right, for 7 months out of the year. And then as soon as he hits, he's like, now what? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
definitely trying to figure out how to stay on track and while life is occurring around you.
Yeah, I work with a lot of baseball players too, and the challenge is they have a hard time keeping on weight during the season just because the volume of games that they have to play is insane compared to other sports.
Yeah.
So while the game itself might not be as active on paper, you know, when you see it on TV, the just amount of times that they're out there is such a challenge. And then also hydration, thinking about their sports during the summer month, and they don't really baseball players don't wear shorts, like they're covered. And so that kind of keeps that heat in. Hopefully with the clothing technology, it's allowed to release heat, but regardless, you're still retaining a lot of heat. And so they tend to sweat more. And then thinking about how even just a 2% dehydration can affect your performance outcome, your thinking, reaction time, and then physical performance, which all those are very important for baseball. And so how do we keep these guys well hydrated throughout their game, but also off of their game and then not? And then the last thing that's really tough for these baseball players is a lot of their games are at night. Yeah. So they're playing these night games. It's 11 o'clock. Now they have to eat dinner. Like the last thing they want to do is eat dinner. Right. And then they have to go and wind down and go to bed. Like they're wired, you know? So it's how do we manage those healthy protocols to make sure that the food that they're eating at night is supportive of a good sleep? And then just how do we maintain that sleep hygiene? Because like you're going to have to play again the next day.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
It's tough. It
yeah,
really is.
Yeah, no, obviously, you know what you know about sports. And then when you are close to someone who is in it every day, it's like a whole nother world that I just didn't know about until he decided he was going to do that. My other question to you, I think, would be revolving around, like, there's just so much misinformation out there, right, about everything these days.
Everything, correct.
But what does that look like for you in terms of kind of helping people navigate some of that misinformation as a dietitian?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. It's not going away. And I'll always joke with my athletes. I'm like, well, you know, you have the right to listen to great information, but you also have the right to listen to stupid information. And that's up to you. Like that's I guess one of the beautiful things, you know, about being able, everyone has a voice, but at the same time, everyone has a voice and not everyone has the right voice. But I think it's just having that open conversation with these athletes and understanding where they're getting their information from. Is it YouTube? Is it TikTok? Is it Instagram? Is it their friends? Is it their coaches? Which is another layer. And then I always like to ask them, I'm like, all right, like tell me what they're saying. Like, what is this argument that's so convincing? And usually it's like, I don't know, they just like said something, it might like help with inflammation or like help me build muscle. And it's always dancing around the topic, but they can't really explain it. And I'm like, okay, well, like I see your point here is, in this case, let's say it's reducing inflammation. Take this greens powder to help you reduce inflammation. It's like, okay, well, do we know the dosage? Do we know like the efficacy? Do we know, is there anything else in there? Is this a safe product to take? Like kind of breaking things down into very, it's almost like kind of annoying, but like breaking things down into the simplest form and then understanding that there are flaws to the other side's logic. And then being like, okay, well, here's what we know does work with protecting your body from inflammation. Like, what do you think are some ways that we can incorporate this side of things? So I always try and break it down logically. I think with a lot of misinformation, they rely on emotion. You're triggered to be like angry at the food industry for doing all these things, or you're supposed to be pissed off or sad or scared. Scared and fear is a huge emotion that's leaned into. But I try to remove some of those emotions and just break it down. Maybe it's just the sciencey background, but just like to break it down into exactly what it is and point out the flaws and maybe the pros and the cons, and then help that athlete make that decision. I think for me, it's very easy for me to want to counter with another emotional response.
Yeah.
But as a practitioner, I try to keep it as technical, as logical as possible. And then all the emotional stuff can come later once the office is closed.
Right. Once you log off.
Once I log off, yeah, I'm like, God, that was so stupid. No, I'm just kidding.
No, that makes sense. And I feel like that would be, that I get frustrated from just things on Instagram, right? So I can only imagine when you're trying to help navigate, all of this with an athlete or a client, and they're bringing you like, well, I should be drinking this cortisol magic potion
Oh
that
my
I saw on
gosh.
Instagram,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, um,
And
yeah,
sometimes it's like if an athlete is really gung ho about it, let them do it.
yeah,
And then we'll see what happens, and sometimes it's those mistakes that can be the greatest lesson. So that's tough for a perfectionist archetype of a dietitian, but I don't know. I'm a firm believer in tough love. And so it's like, all right, do it. Like, you can't always baby your athletes, and they do get babied a lot, unfortunately, but you can't always do that. And so let them learn on their own and then figure it out. And they'll be like, you know what? I don't really think that drink works. And I'm like, oh, really? Let them come to that conclusion.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
No, yeah, I think that I was just curious because I'm sure you deal with quite a bit of that.
I mean, I'm sure you deal with it too, right? Like ever since, after that trip and following you guys, I think the algorithm really like got me, has been just sending a lot of like ag stuff my way. And I was like, who are these people? But it's like, then you'll see again, this is just from my 2 months experience, but like you'll see the small farmers and ranchers, the regenerative farming or ranching practices. You'll see the organic and really pushing that. And like you'll see all of these buzz terms, I feel like also in agriculture. I'm sure there's other things. I'm just not exposed to it yet. Yeah. But like, yeah, antibiotic free meat, or I don't know, whatever. I'm trying my best here. But like it happens in all of our industry too. So it's like we deal with a lot of the same things. And that was really insightful to hear as well. I think you forget about it, but it's like, oh yeah, like you guys have misinformation that you're trying to battle as well. That ground beef thing of store-bought versus whatever. I can't remember off the top of my head, but
buying it from a rancher locally or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Look at the color of it. Like, don't you want to buy this one? And so you guys deal with that all the time as well. So it's just that we're dealing with the same thing, just kind of at like a different lens or a different phase.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. And I think that was kind of, for me, like I said, the biggest kind of takeaway from the 4 or 5 days, however the week that
I
we
don't
spent,
know. Yeah.
was really like that exact point of we all have the same challenges, maybe just like you said, looking at it through a different lens, or it's coming at us through a different audience or
Mhm.
perspective.
Yeah.
But we're all in this together, and I don't know what the solution is, unfortunately. Maybe if we did, we wouldn't be in this situation.
Yeah.
But I do think opening up lines of communication like we have through that experience, I think that's hopefully moving in the right direction.
Totally. I think for me, it was just like, I mean, I'm looking out my window and I'm looking at cars and traffic and people and like stuff, and even just seeing everybody's stories and just like what your day looks like. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then like looking at the cattle and I'm like, oh my God, yeah, they're not trapped in these little cages. Like they're just roaming around. And it's just the little things that you probably don't even think about that are really insightful for me, someone who is far removed from agriculture, to put it point blank, and be like, oh yeah, like these are the cattle that'll eventually somehow get to the grocery store and like they're fine. Like look at them, they're having a great life.
Well,
They're getting scratched on the head. Like what's not to love?
exactly. And I think that's a good point though, because we don't see that, right? Because it's every day to us, but to hear it from individuals like yourself who, like you said, not directly involved in agriculture, don't have grass probably right outside your window or anything like that.
You don't want to step in the grass here. It is a peeing pad for all of the dogs.
I can only imagine. Yeah, I'm sure. What the heck, where was I going? Oh, but just like a reminder of like continue to share those kinds of things if that's the avenue people decide to go down, because it does make a difference. And those are the things that people are like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, literally, like they're just roaming around. They're eating just fine. They're not being like whipped every day. Like, you just think of these like extreme videos again that invoke emotion and what have you. And so those are the ones that stick, but you also have to remember like that's just not the case. And I also think like I'm sure just as it is here in the city, like I'm sure people in agriculture just talk to other ag people. So it's just everyone looks out their window and sees land. Like, so how would you relate to anyone who does like that? That's just the only lifestyle. Like, what do you mean? And so it can be helpful to just, I think, talk to different people from all across the country. Like, your job is to feed people. My job is to teach people how to feed themselves. And it's like, we're on the same team here. We want to feed the country healthy, nourishing food to as many people as we can. And that's it. Like, we want to live a simple life. I don't know. Like, we don't need to argue all the time. Like, this isn't reality TV. We just want to live our life, be good, and do something that fulfills us, and hopefully build those connections along the way. And so I think just opening up those conversations and not being so defensive all the time can really help open up those doors and understand like how much common ground we all have.
Yeah, you literally said exactly what I was thinking. So hit the nail on the head there, Christina. Or I refer to you as that dog.
Not that dog. These are the things that come through my brain, and I'm like, I should probably not say that within the first 30 minutes of meeting people, but I do.
But like, I will.
Can't help it.
That's you, like you said, I don't remember if these were the exact words you said when we started, but like you're unapologetically yourself. And I love that and appreciate that, because I feel like we are in a world where you don't always know what you're going to get with people. So
yeah,
you in all of your humor and just realness.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's a big trend to be authentic these days, which I think is always ironic. You're like, that's not a trend. Like, that's just how it should be. Yeah, but I'm like, all right, like, let's see it, people. Like, let's see you be authentic, not picture perfect. So yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, I can't help it. Who else is going to be me?
Exactly, right? You can't 100%.
No one else is going to do it, so I'll do it.
Might as well take it and own it.
Exactly.
Well, Christina, thank you so much for coming, obviously, to the podcast today and chatting with me, but also just being like so open to everything we threw at you that week and being receptive and asking good questions and like genuinely caring and wanting to learn. Like I'm speaking on behalf of the group, so sorry if they don't agree with me because this is
Can you imagine?
but like that means the world to us because like it's very hard to have interactions like that sometimes. So it was a really good reminder for myself, and I think just a good reminder for the industry that we can have these conversations and they don't have to be scary, and so much good can come out of it. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate you. And last kind of question is, if someone's wanting to work with you, connect with you, learn from you, what is the best way for them to do so?
Yeah. So a couple avenues. You can always go on Instagram. I feel like that's just like our business card these days. At Christina Chu. Also my website, ChristinaY2.com. I'm sure you can just Google it and it'll be fine. And then also, if you want to learn, I have a Patreon channel, which is essentially a paid subscription, really just a community to learn about nutrition, completely ad-free, unfiltered, all that fun jazz. It really is just a place to learn, to plug in your headphones or your AirPods or whatever we're doing these days. And during your hot girl walks or your, I don't know, what's the ranch version of a hot girl walk?
I have been calling it, what did I say the other day? I like literally took the dogs on a walk with the cows. So we just said like a pup walk is what I call it.
A pup walk. Yeah, a four-legged walk.
Yeah.
Yeah, that on your tractor rides, on your four-wheelers. I don't know. Whatever. For me, on the bus, like on the train, public transportation, wherever you are that you just plug your headphones in, you can listen to it then and just assimilate this information into your brain. So you can always find that on any of those avenues, but it's also patreon.com/Christina Chu Studios. So those are the three ways that you can find me. And I'm here for any questions or conversations that you guys want to have.
Awesome. Well, I will be sure to put all that information in the show notes per usual. And again, yeah, Christina, just thank you so much for being a wealth of knowledge and just a fun vibe and energy. Because I think this is how we continue to move everything forward. So I appreciate it.
I love it. Thanks, Allie.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Ag Chicks. Don't forget to follow along on social media at Ag Chicks for more agricultural related content. And also be sure to check out your favorite podcast gear from www.agchicks.net. We'll see you next time.